Okay, so these are just some guidelines. If you have a way that works for you, feel free to use that one. Okay. So your first step, you're going to add or subtract the fractions in the numerator and denominator. Okay, so your goal is to get a single fraction in both of them. You don't want to have two fractions up top and two in the bottom. So you have a single fraction in each. Okay, and you really only have to do that if it's necessary. Sometimes they'll already come as a single fraction, so you don't have to do this step. Okay, now your second step is you're going to rewrite your answer from step 1. So you're going to rewrite the division of fractions. Well, division of fractions from step 1. And simplify. And simplify only if it's possible. Sometimes you can't simplify it. Alright, so for our first example, still writing. For our first example, let's say if we wanted to simplify, say 5 over x divided by 3 over x. So with this one, you already have a single fraction in your numerator and your single fraction in the denominator. So you don't have to do step 1, because usually this is the goal for step 1. Oh, thank you. So first, you can skip this step because you're already a single fraction. In the numerator and denominator. Okay, so you don't have to do the first step on this one. Now your second step is you're going to rewrite it. Okay, so you have 5 over x divided by 3 over x. You can just rewrite that as 5 over x divided by 3 over x. Okay. So now you just have two fractions. So this is where you use division of fractions. Okay. And remember with that one, you write down the first fraction, which is 5 over x. Your division changes to multiplication, and then you flip the second fraction. So 3 over x becomes x over 3. So you have 5 times x over x times 3. And you could have just canceled those two if you wanted to. So these two cancel each other out. So you have 5 times 1 over 1 times 3. Okay. So that would be your answer for that one. All right. Any questions on that one? Yes.
If you wanted to, could you just for the first part of it, could you just skip to the multiply by reciprocal part if you wanted to?
Oh, if you wanted to, you could. All right. Okay, so okay, so let's say for our next example, we wanted to simplify. Say 1/2 minus 1 over x divided by x over 3 plus 1/5. All right. So for this one, since you have 2 fractions in your numerator and 2 fractions in your denominator, you actually have to do step 1. Okay, so your first step, you're going to add and subtract your numerators and denominators. Okay, so we start with 1/2 minus 1 over x. Move that arrow over a little. Okay, so here we see we have an x over here, but we don't have 1 over here in this denominator. So we multiply this by x over x. We have a 2 over here, but we don't have 1 over here. So we multiply this one by 2 over 2. So we have 2x and 2x in the denominator. So all we have to do is go ahead and multiply across. So you have 1 times x is x over 2x minus 2 times 1, which is 2, over 2x. So you have something over 2x minus something over 2x, will just give us something over 2x. So now we just subtract our numerator. So you have x minus 2. Okay. So we have our numerator. Now we do the same thing for the denominator. Separate that a little bit. So if we have x over 3 plus 1/5, okay, again, we have a 3 over here and a 5 over there. You can't really factor those down anymore. But if you have a 5 over here, then you multiply this side by 5 over 5. And you have a 3 over here, so to get 1 over here, you multiply it by 3 over 3. Okay, so now you have 5 times x, which is 5x over 5 times 3, which is 15, plus 1 times 3 over 5 times 3. And again, something over 15 plus something over 15 will give us something over 15. So we can just add our numerators. So we have our 5x plus 3. Okay, so we have our numerator and we have our denominator. Separate that a little bit. Okay, so that means that our original expression of 1/2 over minus 1 over x over x to the third, x divided by 3 plus 1 to the 1 to, I keep saying 1 to the fifth. 1 divided by 5. That just becomes our exponent, why do I keep saying exponent? Our numerator changes to x minus 2 over 2x, and our denominator changes to 5x plus 3 over 15. Okay, so now we have our single fraction up here and single fraction down there. Okay, so now we go to our second step, which is we rewrite it. Okay, so you have x minus 2 over 2x divided by 5x plus 3 over 15. And clean up that 1 a little bit. Okay, so now we just apply the division of fractions. Write down our first fraction, which is x minus 2 over 2x. Our division changes to multiplication, and then we just flip the second one. So you have 15 over 5x plus 3. And then we just go ahead and multiply it across. So you have x minus 2 times 15, or you can put the 15 in the front if you want to, over 2x times 5x plus 3. Okay, so that would be your answer there. Or if you wanted to, you can distribute the 15 and distribute that 2x, where you'll have 15x minus 30 divided by 10x squared plus 6x. Okay, so normally this is the answer you'll see. But if it's multiple choice and you don't see this answer up here, then it might be in this form. All right, so any questions on this one? All right, I'll leave that up for a few more seconds. All right, so for our next example, what if we wanted to simplify 1 over z, I'll put a little line through my z, minus 1/2 divided by 1/3 minus z over 6. Excuse me. Okay, so we have two fractions in the numerator and denominator, so we have to get those to a single fraction in each. So again, our first step, we're going to add and subtract the numerator and denominator. Okay, so we'll start with our numerator, which is 1 over z minus 1/2. Okay, so we have a z here, but this side is missing a z. So we can multiply that by z over z. Okay, we have a 2 over here, but this side is missing a 2. So we multiply it by 2 over 2. Okay, and then we can go ahead and simplify it. So 2 times 1 will give us 2 over 2 times z, which is 2z. minus 1 times z, which is z, over 2 times z. Okay, so we have something over 2z minus something over 2z, will just equal something over 2z. Oh, straighten that up. Let me just go ahead and subtract our numerator. So you have 2 minus z.
Will be just z?
Hmm?
No, I'm not.
Oh. Yep, so we just subtract what's up there. Okay, so we have our numerator. So now we do the same thing for the denominator. Kind of separate that a little bit. Okay, so if we have 1/3 minus z over 6. Now if you wanted to, you could just go ahead and factor that 6, but you can just right from the beginning multiply 3 by 2. So if you have 1/3 minus z over 6, and instead of 6, put 3 times 2. Like I say, you don't have to do this step if you don't want to. You have a 2 over here, but you don't have 1 here. So multiply this side by 2 over 2. Okay, so you have 2 times 1, which is 2, over 2 times 3, which is 6, minus z, since you didn't have to multiply that one by anything, over 3 times 2. Well, should have been 6 there. Okay, so something over 6 minus something over 6 is just going to be something over 6. And just like above, we subtract 2 minus z. Okay, so that means we can now replace our numerator and denominator. So 1 over z minus 1/2 divided by 1/3 minus z over 6 becomes 1 over z minus 1/2 is 2 minus z over 2z divided by 1/3 minus z over 6. That's 2 minus z over 6. Okay, so now we just go ahead and rewrite it. Okay, so our second step, we're going to rewrite it. So you have 2 minus z over 2z divided by 2 minus z over 6. Okay, so now we have two fractions. Let's go move that over some. Which means we write down our first fraction, 2 minus z over 2z. Change our division to multiplication. Then we go ahead and flip the second one. So you have 6 over 2 minus z. Like I said, you can multiply it across and then cancel if you want to, or you can just cancel it here. So 2 minus z, you can kind of think of that as 1 times 2 minus z. So these two would actually cancel each other out. And you can cancel out 6 and 2. 2 goes into 2 one time. 2 goes into 6 3 times. Okay, so the only thing that didn't cancel out up here is that 3. And the only thing that didn't cancel out here is that z. Okay, so that would be your final simplified answer. All right, any questions on that one? All right. I'll leave that up for a few more seconds. So let's say if we wanted to simplify 1 over 8 minus 1 over y divided by 8 minus y over 4y squared. Now remember, the goal is to have two single fractions in your, single fraction in your numerator and a single fraction in your denominator. You already have a single fraction there, so you don't have to do anything in that denominator. All you have to do for your first step, subtract your numerator. And I'll let you start on this one. All right, so starting on this one, first step, well, in this case, we just have to subtract our numerator. Since our denominator is already a single fraction. Okay, so you have 1 over 8 minus 1 over y. You have a y on this side, but you don't have 1 over here. So you multiply this by y over y. You have an 8 over here, but you don't have 1 here. So multiply this side by 8 over 8. Okay, so you have y times 1, which is y, over y times 8. I'll just put it as 8y. Minus 1 times 8, which is 8, over y times 8, which is 8y. So we have something over 8y minus something over 8y, which is something over 8y. So we just subtract our numerator, which is y minus 8. Okay. And again, we don't have to do anything to the denominator, at least not yet. Okay. So that means that our 1 over 8 minus 1 over y divided by 8 minus y over 4y squared, that becomes our numerator. We already know that we changed that to y minus 8 over 8y divided by 8 minus y over 4y squared. Okay, so now we go to our second step, which is rewrite it. Okay, so we have our y minus 8 over 8y divided by 8 minus y over 4y squared. Okay, so we have our two fractions, so we write down the first, y minus 8 over 8y. Our division changes to multiplication, and then we flip the second one. So now we have 4y squared over 8 minus y. And then we just multiply it across, or you can cancel here if you like. Okay, so if we're canceling, you know that 8 is equal to 4 times 2. So if we want to rewrite, you can. So you have y minus 8 times 4. And instead of y squared, I'll just make it y times y. All over, instead of 8 times y, make it 4 times 2 times y. Times 8 minus y. Okay, so now we can start canceling out. Okay, so this 4 and this 4 cancels out. One of these y, well, this y cancels out with one of these. So those two cancel out. Now the 8 minus y and y minus 8, they aren't the same, so you can't just cancel those out. But if you remember, 8 minus y is just negative 1 times y minus 8. Okay, so everything that didn't cancel out here, we have our y minus 8 times y over 2 times 8 minus y. We'll clean that up a little bit. We just multiply it by negative 1 over negative 1. Okay. Remember, you have to do the same thing to the numerator and denominator, even though you're only applying it to one of them. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and distribute this negative 1 to both of those terms. So negative 1 times 8 minus y can make that y minus 8. Or negative 1 times y minus 8 will make it 8 minus y. Actually, y minus 8 is also equal to negative 1 times 8 minus y. So you can use either one. Okay, so this becomes y minus 8 times y times that negative 1, because we didn't distribute that one. All over 2. Remember, negative 1 times 8 minus y is y minus 8. So 2 times y minus 8. Yes?
Why don't you have to distribute the negative 1 to the 2?
Oh, you can. Then you'll just have negative 2 and 8 minus y, and you won't be able to cancel it out. At least this way, if you distribute the negative 1 to this one, they're both just one term. So it's like negative 1 times 2 times 8 minus y. So you could distribute it to the 2 and make it a negative 2, but it wouldn't change the 8 minus y, so you can cancel. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, so you're not distributing the negative 1 to the whole expression, just
Yep.
y minus 8?
Yep, just the, you can either do the y minus